Okay, our next speaker, without any introduction more than this, I would just like to introduce Novi, the cowboy poet and storyteller.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank John Kuhn for inviting me out. And I travel all over doing storytelling, and I'd like to share 2 or 3 stories with you. This is one I'm sure some of you have heard. It's written by Johnny Cash. I walked through a county courthouse square, and on a park bench, an old man was sitting there. I said, "Your old courthouse is kind of run down," and he said, "Nah, it'll do for our little town." And I said, "Your old flagpole has leaned a bit, and that ragged old flag you got hanging on it." He said, "Have a seat," and I sit down. He says, "Is this the first time you've been to our little town?" And I said, "I think it is." And he said, "Well, I don't like to brag, but we're kind of proud of that ragged old flag hanging there. You see, it got a hole in it when Washington took it across the Delaware, and it got powder burns the night Francis Scott Key sit watching it, write and say, 'Can you see?' And it got a bad rip down in New Orleans with Pakenham and Jackson tugging at its seams. And it almost fell at the Alamo beside the Texas flag, but it waved on though. And it got cut with a sword at Chancellorsville, got cut again at Shiloh Hill. They was Robert E. Lee, Beauregard and Bragg, and the south wind blew hard on that ragged old flag. In Flanders Field in World War I, it got a big hole from a Bertha gun. It turned blood red in World War II. It hung limp and low a time or 2. It was in Korea and Vietnam. It went where it was sent by its Uncle Sam, and it waved from ships on the briny foam. And now they've about quit waving her back here at home. In her own good land, it's been abused. It's been burned, dishonored, denied, and refused. And the government for which it stands has been scandalized throughout the land. And it's getting threadbare and worn thin, but it's in good shape for the shape it's in. Because it's been through the desert storm and the fire before, and I believe it can take a whole lot more. So we raise it up every morning, and we take it down at night. We don't let it touch the ground, and we fold it up just right. So you see, on second thought, I do like to brag, because we're mighty damn proud of that ragged old flag. Thank you very much. I see quite a few veterans out here. How many we have, including myself? All right. Look at them. They stand to be counted with banner unfurled. Their say has been said. Their challenge is hurled. They fought for their country. They fought for their rights. They fought for fighting on Saturday nights. For flagging for freedom, for patching for pride. They told to the line with the warrior's stride. They don't seek trouble, but they cut no slack. If you take it to them, they'll bring it right back. They'll rise to muster in danger and strife, defending their honor and their way of life. They'll ride to the limit and fight on hell's rim. If you can't go the distance, don't tread on them. Thank you very much. All right. I got one more short story I'm going to share with you. This is written by Bruce Christensen, and it's called The Rancher's Revenge. Well, we spend all day a-branding calves, and then we took a rest. Buck opened up a six-pack and took a smoke out of his vest. We started in to contemplate the problems of the day, and some stretched out on feed sacks, some on a pile of hay. Then Bucky says, "You know, for 30 years I've been a-running steers, and how this cattle ranching's change could bring a man to tears. Some say that beef's too high, and some say it causes cancer. And any bureaucrat you ask will have a different answer. And when I think of government and all the funds they spent to get the public on the range, and then they raise the rent, They pay a man to grow no corn. They buy another's cheese. They pay you not to milk your cows and turn loose half your bees. Then Pete says on the radio they broadcast Tuesday night that there's just too many cows, and that's the rancher's plight. They say some feller took a count. Now don't this beat the band? They say there are 9 million cows that live upon the land. Then John here done some ciphering and said, boys, look at here. What if all those 9 million head was one gigantic steer? That critter'd weigh 1 million ton. He'd reach from coast to coast. He'd eat 90,000 ton of hay. But what I like the most, he'd have his off hind foot in Buffalo, the front one near Tacoma, his near hind hoof in Jacksonville, and the fourth one near Pomona. And after he ate all that hay, wouldn't it raise a fuss if that cow done to Washington what Washington done to us?
Thanks, Nobi. That's great. Okay, we have a special, brief addition to our program. We have with us this afternoon WXYT radio talk host personality, Mr. Chuck Moss.
Good afternoon and welcome. I look out here and I see that there is indeed cause for hope. Now I look behind you, I see the American flag up there, I see storm clouds all around it, but I see that the sky is clearing. And when I look at this crowd, I'm reminded by the words that Admiral Yamamoto said after his strike on Pearl Harbor, which was as successful as the Clintonoid strike was on the Second Amendment with the crime bill. He said, and I quote, "I fear we have awakened a sleeping giant and filled him with a terrible resolve." And I'm here to tell you that the giant is awake and full of resolution, because I was coming up here today and someone I know called me and said, "Well, why are you going up there to talk about that?" I said, "Well, it's a freedom thing. You wouldn't understand." And she said, "Well, what do you need a gun for?" I said, "Well, for starters, of course, it took them 45 minutes to get to Rosa Parks, but the fact of the matter is it does not matter what I think you need a gun for, or she thinks you need a gun for, or Clinton or anyone. You decide what you need a firearm for. That's what having a right is all about." Now, I hear a lot of talk about rights, about constitutional rights, and I'm here to tell you that you know that your rights don't come from the Constitution. Your rights come from you. Governments do not grant you rights. The people of this country have inalienable rights, and they are endowed with those rights by their Creator. And to secure those rights, they institute governments among themselves. And when those governments become destructive of those ends, they have not only the right, but the duty to change it. And that's what we're here for. Because the Constitution all hangs together. I'm surprised the number of people who just don't get it. They think that they can take away your and mine and their Second Amendment rights, and yet have their First Amendment rights perfectly protected. They think that it's okay to have the Second Amendment just means that the government has a right to force. But they think that when that is done, that it won't be the government has the right to speak or publish or assemble. They don't get it, that it all hangs together. Well, you get it, I get it, we get it. The Second Amendment means what it says. That's why it's there, and we know why it's there, don't we? Because what was it that we just had gone through when they wrote the damn thing? That's right, that's right. Now, it doesn't matter what Bill or Hillary think, because your rights don't come from them. Your rights don't come from the bureaucrats. They don't come from the government. They sure as heck don't come from the United Nations. But what we're talking about here is freedom. It's about freedom. And I'm just here to say that freedom is alive throughout the land. Proclaim liberty throughout the land. And the corollary to that, of course, is when liberty is proclaimed throughout the land, tyrants tremble. And well, they should. Because from what I've seen, they have awoken the sleeping giant, which is the most decent, God-fearing, law-abiding, generous, and enlightened individual in the world, the American citizen, man and woman. And they mess with us at their peril. But eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and so is action. We can't sit on our butts because that's what we've been doing for far too long. I've been watching elections professionally since 1988. Every year they say, well, we're going to throw the buzzards out. What they mean is they want everyone else to throw their buzzards out, but they want to keep their own buzzards so they can get the pork. It doesn't work that way because well-fed, well-housed, well-clothed, but without freedom, it don't mean a thing. Freedom is the first virtue. Freedom first, damn the ideologies. So look at who is running and vote for the person who is the closest to your conscience. And if that person is John Kuhn, then by God, don't let any arguments about pragmatism or splitting the vote sway you. Because if Spencer Abraham wants to have the patriot vote, he damn well better earn it. John Kuhn is here. I don't see anybody else. I see John Kuhn here. Well, I said I'd be brief, and I'm going to leave you just with this one thought. And that's liberty. Freedom. These are words, they're not empty meanings. People are dying for them. They're dying for them in Haiti. But you know, this is an important time in the world because freedom is sweeping the earth. It's only here that we seem to have lost the message, here in the original home. But that's all right, because our freedom is in the hands of the people. God bless the American people. God bless you, you outrageous patriots, you that you came out here on your Sundays. God bless you. God bless the people. God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. Remember in November.
Thank you, Chuck. You know, Chuck put me in mind of a very brief Second Amendment story I'd like to share with you. When John was out in the debates, some debates before the primaries of the Republicans and Democrats, the question of the Second Amendment came up, and Senator John Kelly, who works in this illustrious building, was asked about the Second Amendment, and he said, well, it says a well-regulated militia, and that means the Marines and the Air Force and the National Guard and all of that. And he went on, and John Kuhn's turn came to answer this same question. He got up to the microphone, and he turned around to Senator Kelly, and he said, do you mean to tell me, Senator, that the founders put the Second Amendment in the Constitution to make it clear that we should always know that the military be armed? And Kelly looked foolish, and it was a wonderful moment anyway. Getting back to our program, which we want to move along. We got Mark Scott coming up here in just a minute, and also Ted Nugent. But just before we bring up Mark Scott, in the spirit of tripartisanship, just to make it clear to everyone that even though this is a John Kuhn Libertarian rally, that the Second Amendment should be supported by Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians. In that spirit of tripartisanship, we decided to invite speakers from each of those three parties. The first speaker that we have is a Republican from the 32nd District of Macomb County, Republican Representative, Mr. David Jaye.
Hello, my friends. An armed society is a polite society. We've got a lot of gun grabbers in town. We've got a lot of gun grabbers in this state capitol building. And all the people who are opposed to your right to self-defense use emotional arguments. Not yet have we had any facts, any law statistics, any criminal statistics to prove the point that law-abiding people who carry concealed pistols have been a problem. In fact, the Florida experience has shown that law-abiding people have carried concealed pistols extremely responsibly. And my request to you today, to all of you, is make a statement by calling your own state representative and your state senator tomorrow. Call them collect, because you're paying for their phone anyway. and ask to get in writing whether or not they will vote for House Bill 5454. Now, the way you can remember that is car 54, where are you? And if you don't know where that police car is, at least you'd have a pistol to defend yourself, because my bill, House Bill 5454, would restore the right for you to defend yourself, your family, your business with a concealed pistol. Get it in writing. We all know that politicians can lie, like Bob Carr and the traitor John Dingell and Fred Upton. However, it's a higher level of betrayal if a politician takes a written stand and then lies to you. It's just like when you sign your marriage certificate, it's a higher level of betrayal to your spouse if you cheat on them. So get in writing. Get in writing whether or not they will vote for House Bill 5454. If you don't happen to know who your state rep or state senator is, call your township or library. If that person isn't running, and thanks to term limits, we're going to be getting rid of more and more of these incumbents. Call your township or library and find out who the Democrat nominee, the Republican nominee, and the Libertarian nominee is, and get in writing from them, will they vote for House Bill 5454? And help them out. Next Sunday, next Saturday, go to their campaign headquarters, put up a sign, knock on some doors, labeled, because the election is only 5 weeks away. You have got to invest some of your time and effort, because politicians don't listen very well, do they, after the election? But the gallows wonderfully concentrates the mind, and the gallows is the election day, November 8th. Now, some people say, well, Representative Jaye, we can't just have everyone carrying a pistol, and I've got a fact sheet, in fact, at my desk over here, or if you want to get on my gun rights update, legal and legislative updates, just send me a self-addressed envelope, Representative Jaye. Let me share with you a couple of facts. A couple of facts from the state of Florida. Over 90% of the violent crimes are committed by persons not carrying handguns, and armed citizens defend their lives or property with firearms approximately 1 million times a year. And in 98% of these instances, the citizen merely brandishes the weapon or fires a warning shot. In only 2% of the cases do citizens actually shoot their assailants. And some of these liberals say, well, geez, you know, their spouse is going to shoot their husband coming in late, or how often is there a mistaken shooting? In only 2% of civilian shootings is an innocent person mistakenly identified as a criminal. That compares with an error rate of 11% for our police officers. 11%. Now, it's not fair to compare a civilian to a police officer, because they're doing a great job. They put themselves in harm's way more often than us. But what it shows is that law-abiding people have used their pistols responsibly. In fact, my bill, House Bill 5454, is modeled directly after the Florida law. In Florida, if you're over 21, you can pass a 90-day FBI criminal background check, no history of mental illness, and you've got a gun safety class, you can carry a general concealed pistol permit, and that's what we need here in Michigan. Out of 182,000 civilians who have gotten concealed pistol permits in Florida since 1986, only 10 have been revoked. Only 10. Even Ivory soap's not that pure. We have the facts then that has demonstrated that people should have that right to self-defense. A little more gallows humor is if you're about to get raped, if you're about to get assaulted, if you're about to get robbed, call for police, call for an ambulance, or call for a pizza, and see who gets there first. Unfortunately, police are only able to get to the scene of a violent crime about 1 time out of 5. Only 20% of the time can they get to the scene of a violent crime in 20 minutes or less. What are you supposed to do? Use stern language? That's the sound of freedom, and that's a sound I hope these politicians are going to be listening to, is the thunder of our applause and our commitment to the Second Amendment rights. And we need to set the terms of the debate, not allowing these liberals and the press and our liberal opponents to say, oh, they're a bunch of gun fanatics. Why do you need assault weapons? Why do you need assault weapons? We don't need assault weapons for target practice. We don't need assault weapons for deer hunting. We need assault weapons for personal safety. There's been riots in the city of Detroit, and now we've got UN commanders in charge of our military. And we need to send people like Dick Chrysler to Congress to replace Bob Carr, so we're not going to have American troops taking any kind of orders from UN commanders. Dick Chrysler is running for Congress in this area. I hope you'll consider him. Deb Wyman has got some mail-in postcards. If you oppose American troops from being controlled by UN troops, please visit Deb Wyman's area and fill out the postcard so you can let your state reps and state senators know you want some action now to draw the line in the sand that we're not going to have American troops governed by UN commanders.
Thank you very much, sir.
Now, how many people in this audience have got a Florida concealed carry pistol? Raise your hand.
U.S. Senate.
That was legal. It was legal in the state of Michigan. Michigan had a reciprocal law that respected a Florida CCW permit until that gun-grabbing Gestapo Attorney General Frank Kelly struck that law down. And what was Frank Kelly's learned opinion? What was his rationale? He said the legislature didn't intend to allow law-abiding people to carry pistols. Well, we don't vote on intentions at the state capitol. We don't vote on feelings. We don't vote on desires. We vote on language. And the Michigan law clearly says that law-abiding people licensed by another state are required and allowed to have a concealed weapon pistol. And with the help of Gun Owners Association and Macomb County Attorney Ron Chapman, we will prevail over Frank Kelly this fall. My friends, please work for the candidate of your choice. Call your state rep and state senator. If we light up the switchboards at the state capitol on Monday, then if the politicians don't see the light, they'll definitely feel the heat. Because, my friends, our liberal political opponents are not just political opponents. These gun grabbers are enemies of our nation. So in conclusion, please turn the energy, turn the excitement, turn your passion into direct political action. You know, there are rascals both on the Republican and Democratic Party. My bill, House Bill 5454, is tied up in the House Judiciary Committee by the Republican chairman of the committee and by the Democrat chairman of the committee. That's why I think it's absolutely essential we start looking at the Libertarians for office as an alternative just to Republicans and Democrats. So my friends, hats off to John Kuhn for having this rally. Please get active. You've got 4 to 5 weeks left in the election. And remember, as one of the great American patriots, Patrick Henry, said, either we hang together or we most certainly will hang separately. Take care. Good luck. God bless. Thank you for your support. Get out, knock on doors, and help the candidates defending our Second Amendment rights.
Thanks, Representative Jaye. Now, they've been telling us for years that you're not going to elect a Libertarian. Well, just to show that that's not true, in the state of New Hampshire, in the state legislature, they have D's, they have R's, and they have L's. And so now I would like to welcome to our forum Representative Finley Rothhaus, Libertarian, New Hampshire.
Thank you, Tim. This is incredible. I think there's more people in front of me today than the entire state that I work for. As Tim mentioned, my name is Finley Rothhaus, and it's my thrill to be one of the only 4 elected representatives in the entire country, and it's an absolute thrill to be able to stand before you to speak about Second Amendment rights. In New Hampshire, our motto is live free or die. We take this very seriously in New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, we do not have a state income tax. We don't have a sales tax. We don't have helmet laws, and we don't have seatbelt laws. We take our personal liberties incredibly seriously, and consequently, we as well take our Second Amendment rights very seriously. Across the country, there's a great debate as to how to interpret the Second Amendment. Well, in New Hampshire, we feel that it's quite simple. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, it is the right of the people to keep and bear arms. It sounds simple to me as well. But for those who don't understand and can't comprehend those simple words, what you have to do is back up to a document that just had its 218th birthday, and you have to read part of the second paragraph. And if you'll bear with me very quickly, I'll hope to beat the storm. It goes, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is a right of the people to alter or to abolish it." Did they think we were going to use slingshots? It speaks for itself. Bear with me, I'm sorry. Back up to the present time in New Hampshire. We, as an elected delegation of 4, which happens to only be 1% of the New Hampshire House of Representatives, were able to, as a small group, protect gun rights of the New Hampshire citizens. Most recently, there was legislation introduced to make it was called the Safe Schools Act. It was to make it so that if a citizen who legally possessed his firearm went to pick up his child on school property, he would be committing a felony. We were able to, as a delegation of 4, muster enough support through the gun groups to go in and now have the entire piece of legislation watered down, so basically it says children can't take guns to school. A big step for us as a small party. We also, being a state where the citizens understand their constitutional rights, their God-given rights, we are in an unenviable position where one of our 2 congressmen happened to be the swing vote on the assault weapons ban, or as I've been corrected since being here, the defensive weapons ban. Dick Sweat was, up until the moment the vote was being taken, his staff was telling his constituents that in fact he was going to be voting against the ban because President Clinton found that he was so close, and if you'll recall, it was a 1-vote situation. Dick Sweat switched his vote. And I'm now of the opinion that Congressman Dick Sweat will no longer be a congressman for the state of New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, the gun groups have come to the realization that they can count on our small libertarian delegation 100% of the time. And it's just a matter of time, in my opinion, that gun groups like the NRA, gun owners of New Hampshire, or gun owners of America, consequently New Hampshire, will understand. In Michigan, you have a candidate for the Senate. He understands. He's a man of principle, a man of conviction and integrity. He understands the right to keep and bear arms. That's Senator John Kuhn, for your information. Just one thing that I wanted to touch on before we close up here. Somebody handed this to me just a moment ago, and I've heard this on a number of occasions. Many of you probably have as well, but it seemed appropriate. It goes on to say, when they came for the 4th Amendment, I didn't say anything because I had nothing to hide. When they came for the 5th and 6th Amendments, I didn't say anything because I'd committed no crimes. When they came for the Second Amendment, I didn't say anything because I wasn't a gun owner. And then when they came for the First Amendment, I couldn't say a thing. This coming November, I encourage you, and in fact I say it's imperative that you get out and you vote for a man of conviction, John Kuhn, for your Senate seat. Thank you.
Okay, now it is my very distinct pleasure to present to you someone who you have listened to for years in WXYT in Detroit, Mr. Mark Scott.
Well, they're at it. Does anybody really believe that the crime bill will actually reduce the felony rate in the United States of America? Unleashing billions of dollars in federal money, building a national police force, disarming the law-abiding citizenry, constructing new panel so that they can put you behind bars in penal camps, slopping in the pork-laden education programs which teach blacks and gays how to play basketball together at midnight. And let me tell you something, that if a young man or woman who is going to school in their high school age, and they want to work for someone who will put them to work between the hours of midnight and 6 in the morning, the federal government will say, hell no, we can't afford that. But you can play basketball. And that'll stop the bad guys from raping and pillaging and plundering the inner cities. Well, the whole thing's a scam and you know it. But what is not generally known is that this is a package, and this is part of it, and it's just one in a whole series, which would ultimately turn this country, this land of free America, into a gigantic federal prison. Ever so slowly, my friend, they will, ever so slowly, present it to the American public, whose will to resist federal control over just the local police departments. And then our day-to-day lives become commonplace as resistance to a host of unconstitutional and freedom-restricting mandates continue and continue and continue until they wear you down and wear you out. And consider how this works. A real or planned social problem is made worse by the organized efforts of networking the collectivist, and then the usual statist, the conspirators, if you will. I know that that's a bad word. The conspirators working with knowledgeable agents, people who are in seated powers of influence, offer legislation from inside think tanks so that they can solve the problems. Now, the legislation then is designed to do a number of things, but it always includes two elements. It builds the power of the state, and it helps make the conditions worse. And then that in turn will set the stage for the next round of legal remedies. So what's in store for us in the near future? That's right. Positive personal ID is a requirement for healthcare reforms to catalog that and put it in the record and make sure that every user is now in the files. And just to make certain that no one escapes national registration, the cry for national ID is coming from many forces. USA Today reports it. They say there's broad-based agreement and support for a national ID system. Barbara Jordan, who is the head of the Commission on Immigration Reform, is calling for computer registry of everyone with a Social Security number. In the LA Times, my friend, here's the headline: Electronic Transfer Plan for Benefits Unveiled. A new wallet-sized plastic card will soon allow food stamps, military pensions, Social Security, and other benefits to be paid electronically. Lesbian Health and Human Services Secretary Donna Shalala says, we'll have an electronic audit trail for every transaction. Now there's a National Corporation Computer newspaper. It's called PC Weekly. And the headline in one of their latest issues says, Postal Service, IRS developing national identity cards. And then, of course, the sexual predator in the White House who can't keep his trousers zipped. Your president is considering signing a pair of executive orders that would facilitate the connection of individual bank accounts and federal records to a government ID card. And in that story, the postal representative, a guy by the name of Chuck Chamberlain, outlines how an individual's U.S. card would be automatically connected with the Department of Health and Human Services, the U.S. Treasury, the IRS, the banking system, and a central data bank. The Postal Service is prepared to put more than 100 million of these cards into your pockets within months that the administration signs this, and that can come at any time. Well, what it boils down to is this: there won't be anything you do in business that won't be collected and analyzed by your government. I mean, nothing. Right now, Marines at Parris Island, South Carolina, are already into phase 3. They're using credit debit cards to electronically record every transaction instead of using money. Now, if this isn't enough, this is important. You want to document this? I'm going to give it to you straight. LA Times, page D5, August 17th edition. 6 million medical devices a year are implanted in people. A tiny microchip known as a smart device. And that's going to accompany each surgical procedure. The chip is manufactured by Hughes Identification Devices. That's a subsidiary of Hughes Aircraft. The doctors retrieve the information from the chip using a gun that emits a radio beam. The info is then recorded on a computer-linked global registry. Lipomatrix Inc. is now placing these chips in their soybean oil breast implants. You still doubt that microdoc technology isn't developed to the point that the world could move instantly to a pure cashless society? This is a of the simple equation for enslaving a nation. And that takes us to America's military, now under command and control of the UN. PDD 25, Presidential Decision Directive 25, signed by Clinton, May 5th, placing our armed forces under operational control of the UN. And even more serious is the National Guard Twin Sister Program, where Americans are sent overseas in exchange for internal security forces with a foreign nation. Now, what does that mean? Treason! You bet! It is treason. The executive branch has commandeered, federalized the Guard. Well, we know what that happened. We know what happened at Ruby Ridge, and we know what happened at Waco. Having foreign instead of local troops assures cooperation. And that means our guardsmen won't know the foreign laws, and of course the imported military won't know a damn thing about the U.S. Bill of Rights and will care less. Now, to cap this update, let me refer you to a study that was done by the Pentagon Threat Assessment Officer. And this study is entitled, Beware the Warrior Class, wherein the bottom line is, does the military have the degree of violence required to eliminate this most patriotic menace in America? Now, this guy's name is Major Ralph Peters, and here's who he lists as dangerous: the underclass, the younger males, the genuine patriots, those of you who are here today. No sunshine patriots in this crowd, I'll tell you. And the cherished, cashiered military man. I think they mean the mercenaries. Well, he writes, if the current trend in national disillusion continues by the end of the century, there may be more of these warriors than soldiers. So to counter these warriors, the military must shape up its intelligence gathering. So there it is, my friend, in capsule form. Your government is out there protecting you. All I can say to that is train hard and train smart, warriors. And I was just told moments before I hit this platform that on the 25th of this month they plan to fly the flag of the UN up there. The passage of the crime bill represents a crossroad for America, and there's no question that Congress took the damn wrong turn. We, the people, are losing our rights to keep and bear arms. And it began when we failed to heed the wise counsel of the founding patriots and allowed the conspiratorial interlopers. Now, who in the hell are they? Well, they're those who hold themselves above the constitutional law and above the republic, to lead us into schemes of global conquest. And as you well know, we have paid dearly in blood, in sweat, in tears, and certainly a lot of treasure. I believe we're about to see a far greater price extracted from us, unless sufficient numbers of Americans wake up shortly from their slumber, their sleep. They're going to find that they have joined the long list of the world victims who have paid for their lethargy with their liberty, their property, their country, their lives. While Americans cheer the end of the Cold War and the toppling of the Berlin Wall, and of course the supposed triumph of capitalism over communism, America is being transformed, that's a favorite word of the insiders, before our very eyes into America with a K. The one-worlders call this transformation convergence. An ex-Soviet Union and soon-to-be ex-America will be merged with all nations into a new world order UN superstate. There's nothing new in all of this. We've had plenty of warning the last 40 years or so, but most of us never took the warning seriously, and many of us are still deceiving ourselves to believe that we think the insider globalists who have consistently supported one totalitarian regime after another all over this planet, that they are going to spare Americans from the same gruesome fate that's already suffered by millions of victims of the New World Order. For half a century, the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR elitists, they think they are, have controlled or greatly influenced much of our government's foreign and domestic policies. They've betrayed us at every turn. And here's a sampling of how they've betrayed us. In order to frighten Americans into world government through the ostensible threat of nuclear war, they built the Soviets, with our money, by the way, and help, into a nuclear superpower with transfusions of nuclear materials and technology. For what? Well, for accurate missile guidance systems and MIRVing capabilities. Tens of thousands of our finest men, sons and fathers and brothers, have been killed or left captive in wars that they were not allowed to win. Council on Foreign Relations policymakers tied their hands with impossible restrictions. Rules of engagement. After abandoning our POWs and MIAs to lasting captivity, they turn around, they spit at us, they lie, and covered up evidence of POW survival, and then they thwart the investigations. And then we got a bunch of crazy, wild-eyed kids standing out there as if they knew what the hell was going on, protesting it all. They're bankrupted. They bankrupted this nation with foreign aid that has caused, it's been useless for decades. It's been used to fund not only communism, but any brand of socialism around the globe. And they supported the most brutal terrorists. I can't believe that we still support Marxist liberation movements worldwide, and here we are supporting Aristide, who is an out-and-outright Marxist. Marxist pragmatists, we know what Marxism leads to. You know what the philosophy is. Consequences of socialism anywhere around the world has always been one thing only: the sacrifice of the right of the individual to live for his own sake, which leads to the death anytime they decree it. And they shredded our constitutional process by capturing the two major political parties in this country in order to control the selection of the presidential candidates. You don't think your presidential candidates are controlled? You don't think they control who's going to be president of the United States? You don't know anything about the inner workings of the Republican and Democratic Party. They've supported the constitutional system by fastening, in this sense, in supporting the constitutional system, they have subverted it because they have attached to it, they fastened Marxist programs like the graduated income tax and the Federal Reserve central banking system to our system. Now they want to put our soldiers under UN command and they want to take your guns. I know you're all aware of the questionnaires put to our soldiers under UN command. Take your, and such, the soldiers that are seeking, in the military, they're seeking careers, and they're selecting the very special aspects of the military for what is concerned attitudes of non-traditional missions. Now, what do they mean by that? The U.S., one of the questions put, and I don't want to go through the whole list of it because I've done this many times in the broadcast, you've probably heard it a number of times already today. The U.S. government, this is one of the questions, the U.S. government declares a ban on the possession, sale, and the transportation and the transfer of all non-sporting firearms. That sounds like the crime bill, doesn't it? Well, a 30-day amnesty period is permitted for these firearms to be turned over to the local authorities. At the end of this period, a number of citizens groups refuse to turn over their firearms. This is the scenario that they lay out for the military guys now. And they say, consider the following. Consider the following statement. They want to know what these military men will do. And here is the way they phrase it. I would fire upon U.S. citizens who refuse or resist confiscation of firearms banned by the U.S. government. Now, they want to know how you're going to respond to that. And let me tell you what's happening to the military. Let me tell you what's happening to the military guys. Let me tell you what's happening to the people in the military who say, hell no, I'm not going to shoot on my fellow citizens. What they are doing is assigning them to the desk so that they can get the other guys and put them in the field. I don't know how many guys are going to get to go into the field, but it'll be interesting. Now, that's not all. I mean, they'll be able to use foreign troops in the same aspect. In the mid-1980s, the establishment media kicked off an enormous pro-propaganda campaign playing off the U.S.-Soviet arms treaties and Mikhail Gorbachev and Glasnost. You've heard, all that nonsense. And they did it to rehabilitate the image of the UN. Taking us out to the Mideast, and we're going to solve the problems all around the world. And what this has accomplished is an attempt to make the global parasites over there in New York's East River appear indispensable to the survival of all of mankind. And you know that it worked. The American public bought this. Certainly the news media bought it. And opinion polls began to show increasing support of the United Nations. And then came the Persian Gulf War and Desert Storm, and then Bush and his fellow globalists magnificently exploiting the patriotic fire in this country that was elicited to promote their UN New World Order plans. And you hear Republicans still praising Bush for that, don't you? They're still riding high. But that could all change if we demand state legislation and then a national car that will pull us out of the United Nations. Do it now! America's pro-UN attitude must change rapidly if we're going to have a realistic change and we're going to avert global tyranny and more worldwide genocides. Well, you always have to cut the head off of the snake, don't you? That will not happen unless significant numbers of Americans join the fight to get us out of the United Nations, to stop the New World Order, to preserve American independence and your sovereignty, your freedom. In foreign relations,
As in all other areas of public affairs, government involvement beyond what is absolutely necessary was very wisely viewed with suspicion and great alarm during the beginning of the Republic's early history. Actually, until the rise of the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, foreign policy elitist in our State Department, private citizens were able to engage in real people-to-people, one-on-one exchanges. They did it through commerce, through tourism, through education, through charitable and church donations, contacts. They were by far better ambassadors of goodwill around the world than the professional diplomats today. And they provided far less opportunity for getting involved, and this country involved in foreign quarrels and intrigues. And you know, George Washington, John Quincy Adams warned about foreign entanglements. A new world order under the United Nations. Man, they would not have liked that one bit. Because under the United Nations, it puts an end to individual sovereignty and rights guaranteed by the Constitution. An end to the national and personal armament. Conscription into a UN army or police force to serve at the UN hierarchy's pleasures. Loss of parental rights to raise your children according to your personal beliefs. Coercive population control that's going to determine when or if you may have a child. Marxist-style dictatorships. That means ruthless terror, torture, and certainly extermination, because they want to cow all peoples into submission. Look, this is why our Constitution unconditionally protects the people's right to keep and bear arms, forbidding all government formed under the Constitution from abridging that right. Yet the elected lawmakers, the judges, appointed officials in this country pledged to defend the Constitution, either ignore, twist, or lie about the Second Amendment.
That's treason.
American citizens are put in our prisons for carrying arms, for owning arms of forbidden sorts, or simply not satisfying some doofus bureaucratic requirement regarding the owning and carrying of firearms. All of which, my friend, is an attempt to reduce or eliminate the unconditional right of the people of the United States of America to keep and bear arms, and your right. This is treason. Good people should be armed against evil people. And bad people, when they use their weapons to commit evil, should be stopped. The right to own and carry a gun isn't just some antique liberty, Mr. Clinton. It can be life or death, Mr. Levin. The criminologists tell us that American women are using handguns 416 times a day in defense against rapists. Every 13 seconds, one of America's 70 million gun owners uses a firearm in defense against the criminal. These statistics, by the way, as you probably have already figured out, are not coming from Handgun Inc. Incorporated or Janet Reno. Well, Butch Reno. A gun kept in the home for protection is 216 times as likely to be used in defense against a criminal than it is to cause the death of an innocent victim in that house. Did you know that?
Yes!
I figured you did. Well, my friend, let's get to the bottom line here. I choose to stand on the traditions that you stand on, the tradition of Tom Jefferson, John Adams, Thomas Paine, Patrick Henry. Our public servants better get the hell out of the armory. We are the masters, and we are going to take charge.